Hey, what's going on guys? Welcome back to my channel. It's been a while since I made a video on this channel. So for those of you guys who don't know me, my name is Tanmay Sakpal. I make videos based on tech gadgets, so gadget reviews, more specifically towards photography and videography type of gadgets like cameras, action cameras, pocket cameras, gimbals, microphones, tripods, lights, etc. You can check out this channel. You'll find quite a lot of videos about that. So if you're interested in such type of content, definitely subscribe on this channel. Today is a very special day because I'm gonna talk about a very special gadget that I have, my all new Sony a6700. Well, not really new. I've been using this APSC mirrorless camera since 1 year now, and the only reason that I haven't really made a video about it is because, to be honest, I feel almost ineligible to make a video about this because I'm a very beginner. So this is not going to be a very detailed tech spec review where we get into all the nitty-gritty and all the features about this camera, because truth be told, even I haven't explored it as much. But the reason I'm making this video is because few days ago one of my friend was asking about this camera, and I was explaining him all the things and my user experience, and he was like, hey, I didn't find any review video on your channel, why haven't you made one? So I was like, you know what, even I haven't even explored 10% of this camera, and there's so many things, so many features around this camera that it'll take hours to even cover all those things. So he was like, just make an experience video, your user experience and how it has been for the 1 year that you're using this camera. And that made me realize that yes, I should actually make a video which covers my own user experience as a rookie, as a beginner, as a hobbyist photographer, videographer, and what made me choose this camera, etc. So in this video we're gonna talk all about that. And quick disclaimer, as I said, this is not a very detailed tech spec video, or this is not where we throw up charts, we measure dynamic range, we measure the sensor quality, etc. For that you guys can Google many other videos from much more experienced and expert photographer, videographer and reviewers. Here we are gonna talk about a hobbyist photographer, videographer who chose his very first APS-C mirrorless camera. That's about it. Alright, so with that points in mind, let's start off with this video. So let's quickly start with a little bit of introduction about this camera. So this is basically Sony's flagship APS-C camera. It is the brand new a6700, which is the successor of a6600, and this was launched last year, I suppose, June, July of 2023 in US, and consecutively later in November it got launched in India and other markets also. I got my hands on this camera in early November because I got it from a friend who was coming from the US to India, so he got it for me. And the price back then and even today, by the way, is around $1,400 US. So it's not exactly a very affordable camera, but it is not also very expensive. Now it's a APS-C camera, meaning that it is a crop sensor and not a full frame sensor. Again, if you don't know the difference, you guys can Google it out. Just that APS-C camera sensor is smaller than a full frame camera sensor, and that also results into compact size, smaller lenses, affordable cost, affordable lenses, etc. Okay, I'll explain to you in a separate video why I went with APS-C versus full frame. We can get into the details about that, but let's first talk about this camera. So before I talk about my user experience and the things that I liked about this camera and disliked about it, let's just quickly brush through all the key highlights or key features that this camera has. So this is a 26 megapixel XMOS CMOS sensor, and for the processor it has the latest Bionz XR processor, which is also used in its higher end models. So Sony also offers this Bionz XR processor in the full frame lineup. So performance wise, it's a very fast and very agile camera. So when you talk about Sony mirrorless camera, obviously the autofocus system is going to be amazing, and with this camera specifically they've also incorporated a AI chipset which enhances the subject detection. It has different subject detections like human detection, human eye AF and live tracking in real time. It can also track subjects, it can track cars, planes, birds, animals, insects, you name it, and this camera can track it in real time. Now another key highlight is that this is a hybrid camera, meaning that it does photos and videos both, and it does it really well. In terms of photos, it can continuously shoot 11 fps when you're shooting with RAW plus JPEGs. And if you're shooting just JPEGs, or if you're just shooting the HEIF format, then you can pretty much go continuously, I think up to 1000 photos in one single burst, in one continuous shooting. And that's more than enough for most of the amateurs and beginners and even professionals. And 11 FPS is, I think, more than enough if you're shooting in RAW as well. Now I'll be honest, I haven't even shot most photos in RAW in this entire year. I think I tried it only once when I was doing, the Milky Way astrophotography. I'll talk about that in some other video. But yeah, I haven't even scratched the surface of all the things that this camera offers. That's why I was saying this entire video is going to be from a beginner's perspective. Moving on, this camera also has powerful video performance, and that was a key highlight and a very important point for me to buy this camera. And when it comes to video performance, this camera can shoot up to 120 FPS in 4K, and that's a big deal because Sony doesn't even offer that in the beginner level full frame cameras or many other cameras. And at this price point, this is the only camera that can do 4K 120 FPS. Of course, it has a 1.5x crop, but to even shoot that high frame rate at this price point, I think it was a very important factor for me. But in this one last year, truth be told, I haven't really used 4K 120 FPS that much, because obviously you shoot 4K 120 FPS when you want to shoot some action and you want to slow it down. So you'll do it only when you want to shoot some very good quality slow motion, and that doesn't happen all the time. So even though I really wanted a camera to shoot 4K 120 FPS, it's not something that can be a deal breaker for you guys, okay? And lastly, this camera also has something called as in-body image stabilization, called as IBIS in short, wherein the sensor inside the camera has some mechanism of stabilization. The entire sensor moves along so that, when you're like handheld and when you're shooting photos, videos, and if you have very shaky hands, the IBIS system compensates for that shake, and it removes that jittery motion. The IBIS is not that great, but it is always good to have the extra stabilization on this camera. Now apart from that, there are many more features, like this is also a weather sealed body. All the ports are kind of weather sealed and you can go outdoors in harsh environments. And then there are other ports. We have a USB-C port which supports direct charging. You can also have a webcam mode. You can connect your smartphone via a creators app provided by Sony, and you can use it as a remote trigger for this camera. Or you can transfer data, photos and videos from your camera to your smartphone wirelessly. It also has a beefier grip, and not to forget the NPZ battery, which is also used in the full frame lineup. So the battery performance and battery backup is also great. So there are a bunch of other features also. I'll list the entire product specifications in the video description if you want to go through that. But let's now actually jump to the main part of this video, that is my particular user experience and what I liked about this camera, what I disliked about this camera, and who is this camera for in case if you are in the market to buy your very first mirrorless camera. Should you consider this one or should you look out for some other alternatives? We'll talk about that. That is the more important part of this video, and if you've made it so far, please make sure you watch this part. So starting off, I'll talk about some important things that I liked about this camera and what my criteria was to choose my very first camera. So this camera basically has been my entry into the mirrorless world, interchangeable lens cameras. This is my very first mirrorless camera, and I've been wanting a mirrorless camera for like at least past 3-4 years before buying this. Last year when I got it, I had been saving money, I had been thinking about which to buy. I wanted full frame, then I was contemplating on the cost, I was contemplating on the size, and a lot of things played important role. So one of the very important factor was that it should be very compact. Okay, so portability matters a lot, and that is the reason why I haven't pulled the trigger so far so long for so many years. Even though I have a tech gear channel, I didn't own a proper mirrorless camera or a DSLR for very long. That is because I like to keep my gear compact. Whenever I'm traveling, it becomes a hassle. Okay, so right now even the video that I'm shooting right now is on my DJI Pocket 2, which is many years old now, and it's still doing amazing. It's shooting 4K right now, so it's a very compact device. Other device that I have is a action cam, DJI Action 4. You guys must have seen the review on this channel. If not, you guys can check it out. That's a really great action cam. Apart from that, I have a drone which is the DJI Mini Again, a very tiny under 250 gram micro or nano drone basically. So all my gear generally is very compact because of the portability factor, and that played a huge role. Okay, so keeping that in mind, I definitely wanted a much more compact camera, and hence I went with the APS-C camera rather than the full frame. However, even full frame cameras nowadays are becoming smaller and smaller. You must have seen the A7C2 or A7C by the Sony, which is the smallest full frame camera. We also have the new Panasonic full frame camera, which is also very compact. But the second factor obviously was the price point as well as the lens ecosystem. This is very important. So if you are looking for a camera to buy, a mirrorless camera, a very important factor is the lens ecosystem. So each camera brand has its own lens mounting point. So this is an interchangeable lens camera, meaning that I can remove this lens and change the lens and change the focal length depending upon the usage. And the mount over here is different for different brands. So Sony has its Sony E mount, Canon has its Canon RF mount, Panasonic I think has its L mount, and then there are other less known mounts as well. But these are the three main brands and the three different mounts. And when I was looking for the lens options, the Sony E mount has many more third-party lenses. In fact, this is an example. This one is a Tamron lens on a Sony body, right? So Sony E mount is kind of like open to other third-party manufacturers, and they can make the lenses for the Sony bodies. So this was a major selling point for me, and I guess now even Canon has opened up its RF mount for third-party manufacturers. So if you're looking for Canon, even that's a great choice. So the next very important reason for me was that I wanted a hybrid camera. So I am not a video enthusiast or a photo enthusiast. I'm somewhere in the middle, kind of more towards the video. Okay, but I do like to shoot photos. If you've seen my Instagram handle, and I actually have started a separate channel, Lens of Tanmay, where I do POV photography using this camera. So I made a dedicated channel for general travel vlogging and all those things. I used to do it on this channel itself, but now I have separated that. On this channel I'll only be doing gadget reviews and tech gadget stuff, content creation around camera and photo gear. And on that channel, Lens of Tanmay, is where I use these gears and shoot content like travel vlogging, action cam videos, POV photography, videography using this camera. Now in the Sony lineup of APS-C cameras, if you are a video centric guy, if you are shooting only videos and if you're doing professional videography, cinematography, then A6700 has a Cineline sibling, which is FX30. So FX30 is Sony's offering for cinematographers and videographers and video only camera. But for me as a beginner, I didn't want to restrain myself just to videography. I also wanted to do a little bit of photography, learn it as a hobby, and that was a really good decision, and that's why I went with A6700. It does photos and videos amazingly well, and even in the videography part, it does 99% of the things that the Sony FX30 does, and it does at a very low price point compared to the FX30. So A6700 cost I think around $1,400 and the FX30 is I think around 1800. At times it is on discount, so don't quote me on that. But yeah, I wanted a hybrid camera that does both photos and videos, so that was the purchase decision. And talking about the APS-C versus full frame, the main reason to go APS-C was obviously the budget and the price point. Full frame lenses and cameras are much more expensive, so that was the one important factor. But the other important obviously factor was portability. So not just the camera body itself, but the lenses of APS-C cameras are also much more compact, and the only downside obviously is the low light performance, which to be honest, as a beginner, it is not that big of a deal, and it also depends upon which lens you use and what scenario you're in. So these are some important points that I took into consideration before I went ahead and purchased this camera. So these were some of the good points as well. So just to list them down quickly: compact design, fast and accurate autofocus system, powerful photo and video performance, making this a truly hybrid camera, in-body image stabilization, very good battery life because it borrows the NPZ battery from the full frame cameras, huge lens selection and E-mount ecosystem, and it's ever growing. There are many more competitors now, and you can have You don't need to buy a very expensive Sony lens, although the native Sony lenses are amazing. I have one 15mm prime lens, APS-C prime lens. It's a G lens, it's very high quality. And the second lens is this Tamron 18-300 all-in-one zoom lens. These are only two lenses currently that I own, and I do want to buy more lenses, so I'm looking at other options also. And yeah, overall a powerful performing camera, and I won't say it is for the absolute beginners, but if a beginner is picking this up, it will be more than enough to satisfy most of its necessary requirements, and even can be used by semi-professional guys as a B cam or even as a cam if you're doing professional work on a budget. So it's not all 100% great about this camera. There are some minor niggles that I have been facing using this camera for the last 1 year, and one such minor issue or one such minor concern that I always face is that this camera does have a EVF, which is by the way great, and kudos to Sony. They could have easily removed it out to make it even more compact, but they kept the EVF. But the EVF is very tiny. It has this eye relief, which is good to have, but because the EVF is so small and because I have spectacles, it's very difficult for me. So if you don't have spectacles, maybe you can adjust with this. It's not that good quality, but it is doable. If you're outdoors in a sunny environment, you really need the EVF sometimes. That is because the second drawback, or you could say second negative of this camera, is that the screen is not very high quality and it's not even that bright. Okay, so this is where I think it could be a deal breaker, maybe not. Maybe for me it is not a deal breaker, by the way. I can even adjust in bright light, but the brightness on this screen is not very good, and of course I have set it to the maximum brightness. It's not that it's not bright enough, but it's not bright enough when you're outdoors in sunny environments in broad daylight. You're gonna face some issues to look at the screen to see if the things are in focus or not, and it's not a crisp display, right, compared to its competition, something like some offerings from Panasonic or Fuji or even Canon. Those LCDs are considered more superior to this one. So these are the only couple of issues, or you can say niggles or nitpicking things that I have faced in the last 1 year of using this camera. One thing that you could add on as a maybe disadvantage is the overheating factor. So because this is a very compact body, and if you're shooting in high frame rates, let's say 4K 60 fps or 120 fps, and you're shooting for longer durations and you're outdoors in hotter temperatures, chances are that this camera will overheat. Has it overheated on me? No, it has never really overheated on me, because whenever I'm outdoors, I generally shoot 4K 60 fps, but the video length duration is not long. Generally, 10 minutes at a stretch is the maximum that I've shot. I think in the indoor situation, I have shot 4K 30 fps for 20 to 30 minutes, never really overheated, never even felt warm to the hand. But when I'm outdoors, I have felt that camera being a little bit warm to the touch. Didn't overheat on me, but as I said, the recording length duration for me is not that long, and for most people we are not gonna shoot long form content in higher frame rates. Even if you are shooting a wedding or if you're shooting a seminar which goes for 1 or 2 hours, maybe you'll shoot it in 4K 30 fps or 4K 24 fps, and in those frame rates I don't think the camera will overheat. Although don't take my word for it, you can watch more videos about overheating test. I did watch many videos and I came to the conclusion that this camera will overheat provided I'm shooting in 4K 120 fps for more than 10 to 15 minutes. So yeah, that is the only time you could say that this camera has a little bit of disadvantage. So yeah, this was an overview about this camera. There are many features that I haven't even touched or talked about. What I'll do is I'll make smaller parts of videos talking about individual things like the IBIS, like the autofocus. The autofocus has so many options that I exhausted myself exploring those options, and I have rarely used all the different options. There is sensitivity, there is speed, then there are different tracking modes, etc, the focus points. So there are too many things to explore. So what we'll do is we'll make more videos as we progress on this camera, and we'll talk about individual things about this camera, what I like, what I dislike, APS-C versus full frame. One important thing that I wanted to talk about is the different lens selections and the lens options that go along with these cameras. So we'll talk about those things also. And lastly, of course, when you buy a mirrorless camera, a DSLR mirrorless camera, be it full frame, APS-C, micro four third, whatever the sensor size is, you not just buy the camera, but you need to get some important accessories also to make your shooting and videography experience easier for you. And I'm not just talking about tripods, but things like quick release systems, straps, slings, protective gear for your camera, etc, etc. Those are very, very important. Maybe you need some filters, ND filters, variable NDs, circular polarizing filters, etc, etc. There are so many more accessories that also increases your budget. So when you're looking for a mirrorless camera, you need to consider the things like lenses, the accessories, and all the things that go around this whole ecosystem of mirrorless cameras. So yeah, we'll talk about all of them separately in individual videos. If you have any questions about this specific camera or in general about mirrorless cameras, please put them in the comment section. I'll try to answer them. I know this video went a little lengthy, and actually it could have been even more lengthier. I want to keep it compact, and hence I'm not covering every single thing. So there are definitely some points that I may have missed out, and we'll cover them as we proceed. I'll create a separate playlist for just mirrorless cameras or cameras in general, and you guys can check it out in the video description. Alright, that's it for this video, guys. I hope you liked this video. It's been a while that I made a video on this channel. It feels good to be back on this channel, and please guys, let me know in the comments what are your thoughts on this camera or in general the whole mirrorless ecosystem. Thanks for watching. See you guys in the next one. Peace.